Hello, everyone. For those of you just joining us, we're going to get started in just a minute here. Thanks so much for joining. All right, we'll go ahead and get started here. Hello, everyone. So delighted that you are taking time out of your day, wherever you are in the world, to join us and learn more about Schwarzman Scholars and our upcoming selection process. My name is Wyatt. I'm the Associate Director of Global Admissions here at Schwarzman Scholars. So happy to have you with us, and we're going to spend the next hour or so together with my esteemed colleagues from our Schwarzman Scholars U.S. Global Admissions team, and we're really here to help set you up for success as you prepare your application for Schwarzman Scholars. So we know this can be a challenging process. It's designed to be very self-reflective for you to really evaluate your own leadership narrative and kind of where you're headed, and really think critically and carefully about how Schwarzman Scholars may fit into that and how you really connect with the mission of this program, which we're going to talk quite a bit about today. So I just want to say on behalf of the entire team, a lot of us are represented here, and there's several other colleagues based around the world who could not join us today, who also send their regards. And we just want to be here to support you through this process, as we are 11 days, 7 hours and 56 minutes away from our September 21st, 2021 application deadline to join the 7th cohort of Schwarzman Scholars, which will begin their studies in Beijing in August of 2022, before you know it. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleagues to introduce themselves as well, and then we'll kick off. Christian, over to you.
Thanks so much, Wyatt. Hi, everyone. My name is Christian. I'm a proud member of this admissions team, and I look forward to some of the conversations that we're going to have today. I'm going to pass this over to Federico.
Hello. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We have quite a lot of people, 115 and counting. So thank you very much, wherever you are in the world, for joining us today. We hope this session helps clarify a few questions and calm the nerves of those who are nervous about it and counting down for the deadline, and help you all cross the finish line before submission with the best you have. And with that, I'm tossing to Alicia.
Hi, everyone. Alicia Pan here. Very excited to have you join us today. I'll toss it over to Hannah.
Hey, everyone. My name is Hannah. Also super excited to be here with you all today and chat through our admissions questions with the rest of the team. I'm going to toss it over to Sarah.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining us. My name is Sarah Fisher, she, her pronouns. I'm so excited to not only cross this finish line with you, but also make sure that you feel comfortable and excited in doing so. So I'll pass it over to Christian.
Thanks so much, Sarah. And we actually introduced ourselves in order of how long we've been at the organization. So it's really amazing to see that our team is dynamic and growing as the program grows. So just a little bit of a housekeeping brief. It's important to recognize that we have a lot of different online resources, from our website to our YouTube channel, that center a lot of the conversations that are going to be spotlighted today. So whether you're thinking about how to craft your leadership narrative, or thinking about reapplying to the program, maybe trying to guess why China is important, we've got a ton of resources on our YouTube channel that we want to redirect you to, including last year's advice from admission. So a lot of the topics that we're trying to stay away from are ones that are fully answered in that presentation. So we hope that you'll take a chance to look at that video, as well as some of our other spotlight series. As far as Zoom best practices, please use the Q&A function to ask your question. And so for the cadence of the hour, we are going to ask questions to each other, ones that are most frequently asked in our office. And so we have a bunch that are queued up, but then we'd love to learn more what you're curious about. And so I'm going to lead off with the first question, and this is going to be going over to Alicia. What is new about the application this year?
Thanks for that question, Christian. And I'm so excited about this because I have been really immersed in getting this ready to go for you all. As you all have experienced by now, hopefully for those tuning in, we do have a new applicant system, a data system. And so we are excited to be using this. It should be much more user-friendly interface So a reminder for you all, when you log into the Schwarzman Scholars application, it also has this pop-up button that says go to application, and it automatically goes to the biographical section of the action. But you can always return to the home section, and there you'll be able to find links to our application instructions and also links to the application walkthrough. But this really, again, should be much more easy to use compared to what the database or application system that we've used in the past. And you will do everything online. All the application materials must be submitted online. So you'll upload your transcripts there. You're going to request recommendation letters from the application portal. And so again, going to the application walkthrough video that our colleague Lisa created will be very useful for you. In addition to that, we're going to talk a little bit more about the way we've structured things. And there's a new short answer that we have this year, and I'll ask Wyatt to expand on that further. Off to you.
Thanks, Alicia. So just to start out, as we think about this short answer, it's really core to the heart of the program. And so we added this question to really get a sense of, from your perspective as an applicant, what excites you, what energizes you, personally and professionally about the mission of Schwarzman Scholars. So we've gotten questions about this over the course of the last few months as candidates work on their applications. So we want to take this opportunity to really set you up for success with this question. As we step back a little bit, the global pandemic that we have been living through over the past year and a half has really revealed, I think, to all of us, the need for leaders to work across borders and time zones and cultures. And that is really at the heart of why Steve Schwarzman founded Schwarzman Scholars back in 2013. He knew from his own global career across borders that to be successful as a leader in the future, you have to understand China. And so he really founded the program with that in mind. But one of the things that he's been talking about recently, actually just this morning, we had the convocation ceremony to open the academic year for our 6th cohort of Schwarzman Scholars. And one of the things Steve talked about is that really the past year and a half has underscored the need for Schwarzman Scholars really sooner than he could have ever predicted when he started the program. So, intercultural, international cooperation, cultural exchange, and leaders building a community together to work together to solve the problems that we're facing as this generation and beyond is really at the core of what we're working on. So, and we really believe that you all are here today, and you all are interested in Schwarzman Scholars because you connect with that mission in some way. You realize that if you're going to be successful as a leader in the future, you have to understand China. You need to be able to work with colleagues from China. And understand the culture and its people, and in order to have that successful and contributing role in the future in whatever field you may go into. So the question specifically in the application, if you haven't approached it yet, is take one aspect of the Schwarzman Scholars mission as you see it and describe how it aligns with where you are today, professionally and personally, and how it will advance your goals. So one thing to just put out there right at the front, you'll see this on our website, but really taking a step back and looking at the program from a 10,000-foot view, the mission of the program, it really is to create a global network of young leaders from around the world, from across sectors, who will build a community together during their 11-month program at Schwarzman College at Tsinghua University, and then will stay connected together and with the rest of the members of the growing alumni community as they go out and live their lives and develop their careers as leaders across sectors and across the world. And ultimately, this is really a lifelong commitment to work on this mission of increasing mutual understanding, increasing connectivity between China and the rest of the world, China and your home country. And really the ultimate goal there is to further world peace, right? To make sure that we, the generations that, that come after us inherit a more peaceful world and a more collaborative and connected world. So Schwarzman Scholars will play a key role in that as we grow our alumni community now from 600 to 700 and beyond, and eventually there'll be 5,000 and 10,000 and 50,000 Schwarzman Scholars alumni. You can imagine what impact the program is going to have on the world in countless ways that we can only begin to imagine. So really encourage you to use the resources Christian mentioned. all of the scholars on our YouTube channel and on social media, they all talk about the mission in some way and how they connect with it. So we encourage you just to hear, get different perspectives on the mission, but that's really the core of what we're doing. So what excites you about that? What energizes you about that? This is very personal to you. There's no canned response for this. There's no one answer that we're looking for. From your perspective and your background and your leadership trajectory, why Schwarzman Scholars right now? And what role is the program going to play? So with that, I am going to turn it over to my colleague Federico, and we'll talk a little bit more about the experience abroad section.
Well, thank you, Wyatt. And it's actually a perfect segue because, of course, as Wyatt very well put, part of the mission of the program is to really invite people from all backgrounds, and so interculturality and the ability to navigate across cultures, across different political views and economic views of the world and religions, and everything is part of what this program is trying to do and to foster. But that doesn't mean that, and that's not part of our understanding, that people who have traveled to multiple countries are more apt necessarily to be part of a global community of scholars more than people who have never left their home countries or anything like this. So one question that we receive quite often from applicants is how to fill up and how to complete the experience abroad section of the application. Is one of the, for most of you, I believe, who are watching us today, who have already started the application. If you haven't started today, there's not much time left. So you will be confronted and you will be faced with that specific section of the application that asks for meaningful experiences abroad and asks you to list places that you've been, not necessarily for tourism or short-term experiences, but experiences that were either professional experience, academic experience, or volunteer experiences that were at least, even I forgot now, at least 2 months long. That were not simply, and what we're trying to observe that and map, we're not trying to exclude or rank candidates based on how many places and how many different places they have visited in the world. That is one more indication and a window into who you are, what your trajectory has been so far in your life. And just to give the admissions committee who don't know you, right, a further glimpse of your trajectory as a person, as a professional, as a leader. So when filling up the experience abroad and when completing that part of the application, don't try to impress the admissions committee by listing a whole full list of every single place you visited in your life. And I think the same applies to the professional experiences. We are obviously dealing with a population that is incredibly diverse. Many of our applicants are still in undergrad, others, and they don't have an extensive professional experience versus people who have had some years after college. So don't feel pressured. This is not an exclusive part of the application form, right? Excluded in the sense that you will be excluded if you don't impress us with a large list of experiences abroad that you may have. And I think related to this as well, and I'll pass the word to Sarah next to talk a little bit about video. It's another aspect of the application that causes some anxiety among students because the prompt is very vague, and I think it's purposefully vague. It's kind of an open canvas. So if you could tell us a little bit, Sarah, about general tips for the video section, which is not a mandatory part of the application, by the way. So go on, Sarah.
Thank you so much, Federico. And I agree. I think this is a perfect place to talk about this, especially as you mentioned when it comes to this anxiety about impressing the admission committee and what's going to really give you that edge. I think the video actually is more about you as an applicant than it is about us as an admission committee. I really encourage folks to, like Wyatt was saying earlier, use this as a reflection point. The video is not required on purpose because we understand the sort of this very broad, vague, nebulous request can be really anxiety provoking for some individuals. And maybe you feel like there's nothing really more that you'd like to add, and that's perfectly okay. The video is not really meant to further explain the prompts that you've already answered. It should not be an extra explanation of your resume necessarily. However, I think it can be a really beautiful place to allow us to learn more about you as an individual. The application process, as much as we feel like we gain entry into the way that you think and how leadership is manifested, we understand that you are a complex, multifaceted human being. And it adds, as my colleague Christian likes to say, an extra splash of color, or I believe a piece of saffron in a dish, which is both tasty and intriguing and mysterious. And it is fun to be able to see applicants bring their whole selves to an application, in the sense that if you have a hobby or an activity or a place that's really meaningful to you, these videos do not have to be cinematic works of art. If you are a cinematographer or you're very good at making videos, of course, you can showcase those skill sets. But the majority of the videos that we receive are shot on phones or laptop computers in the confines and comfort of your own home, since that's where a lot of us are right now, given the global context. So what I really encourage folks to think about is to sort of de-escalate the pressure and turn inward. Do some meditation, reflection. Think about what is something that I would like someone I've never met to know about me, and something that just gives me, again, that splash of color or that extra complexity that I would want a stranger to know. And I think it's always exciting for us as an admission committee to be able to see those videos, because it allows us to see this other side of you. So when we're presenting you in front of different committees and different stakeholders, it is a very exciting part of the application. Again, I would just really love to underscore at the same time that if this is producing a lot of anxiety for you and you'd prefer to just walk away from it and say, I'm not gonna deliver something that's going to make me happy, then you are more than welcome to do that as well. We'd like you to feel comfortable in that presentation. So in addition to thinking about how your story is being told, right, whether it's the video or places you've lived, recommendation letters also play a really big role in that. When it comes to other folks in your life, in your career, in your education, speaking on your behalf. And I'm going to turn over to my colleague Hannah to talk a little bit more about those recommendation letters.
Thanks, Sarah. I will start off by saying, since we are 11 days out, I would strongly recommend that you prioritize reaching out to recommenders if you haven't already. That being said, don't be afraid to give your recommenders context. Even if you were their favorite student, you might have been their student 3 years ago and they might not remember that fabulous essay you wrote or that amazing project you did as their employee in the exact detail that you do. So don't be afraid to reach back out to them to give them that information. Also, don't be afraid to share with them the rest of your application. This really is one piece of your larger narrative, and your recommender isn't necessarily going to know all of those other pieces without seeing them. And so it's totally not out of the ordinary and something that we would advise for you to either talk through what you're writing about or even share your essay with them so that they can also see where they're fitting into this process. It'll definitely help them gain clarity on what this program is, why you're applying for it, and how they can best sort of promote you as someone they're recommending for the program. So that would be my strongest advice, is just don't be afraid to connect, don't be afraid to share. It's very, very helpful to them. They are definitely writing more than one recommendation, probably per year for different programs, and it'll help them write you the strongest letter that they can, and that's definitely something that you want. Also make sure that you're kind of varying recommenders. You don't want them to all be sharing the same story about you from the same lens. You want to create that different range of context, add more layers to that application through those recommenders. And another important thing that they'll touch on is your different roles and your leadership roles and recognitions that you've received. And so to talk a little bit more about how you'll fill that in the application, I'm going to turn it back over to Alicia to talk about those descriptions.
Super. Thanks so much, Hannah. And so on our application, you'll note in the leadership roles and recognitions that we're asking that you list up to 10 leadership roles, awards, scholarships, publications, or special recognitions that you've received. And there we're asking that you include the name, the role, the location, and the date of participation if it's applicable, or when you received that award, and a brief description. Why are we asking you to parse this out away from something that you would state in your resume or your CV? Here, this is really just a framing aspect of things. So we are asking you for to showcase and list those opportunities in which you went above and beyond what was just required for you in a role. So for example, you may be at an organization, maybe you are working and you are going to be working in this one title, but you decided to create another initiative, or you received recognition for what you have accomplished beyond what was just listed in your job description. That's an opportunity for you to list this in this roles and recognitions area. So this is an opportunity, again, for us to see your demonstrated leadership. Oftentimes, there's many people, and we all are a part of organizations, and we go through, and that's just what we do is what is expected of us in that role. Here, we really want you to showcase where you have demonstrated your leadership. And we encourage you, again, to just think very broadly in this way, in the context and the communities that you're a part of, too. So it does not have to be only related to your work environment or your school environment. Certainly, there's also volunteer opportunities that we would love to hear about, too. And in your brief description, we encourage you to provide more context in which you were working under. So perhaps if you receive this award, only X amount of people receive it every year. Or for the publications, it is a regional newsletter. Give us some more context about your community and how you've contributed in that way. So hopefully that brings more clarity in the roles and recognition section of our application process. And again, context is very, very useful, and think of it as going beyond, above and beyond what you were called to do just at the base level. So with that in mind now, there's a lot of other questions about how we're able to relate in the current here and now that we all are a part of regarding COVID and that clarification comments section of our application. I'll turn that over to Christian.
Thanks so much. And I'll actually answer this in a way that kind of zooms out to the entire application, that the entire application is a landscape of your leadership. So the stories that you share in your essays, the letters that you curate from the champions in your life to what you put in your resume. So everything that we ask for in the application is telling a leadership narrative. And so the reason why we include the clarification comment section and some of the spaces in the descriptions is that we cannot make understanding and decisions on information that we don't know. And so throughout your trajectory, if there were things that were really important, again, in your demonstrated leadership, it's important to add that context. For COVID in particular, we recognize that we're going to hold space for semesters in which their grading policies might have been disrupted, or for leadership activities that might have also been paused because of the pandemic, but you have to be able to provide some context using those spaces to give a little bit of color and texture to understanding your journey. So the question will be, what have you done in lieu of that? So if you weren't able to gather your communities in person, what was your way to push past that barrier and stay connected to the people that you care about? And so utilize every single inch of that application to provide context, whether through those different comments, to understanding your academic trajectory, to being able to understand the disruptions that were due to the COVID pandemic, that you really want to be thinking about intentionality. We're not asking you to download everything that you've done in your life. We're asking you what's important in your vision for leadership. And so make sure you approach it with that kind of discernment, that I can include a bunch of volunteer or internship opportunities that might not be that meaningful to me. So really pick and choose, because the more that you crowd out things in your application, then the less significant the rest of it becomes. And so really try to understand how that narrative really comes together throughout all the different parts of your application. And so I want to say, again, thank you for all the different questions that are coming in. And so those were some of the topics that we know that we're frequently asked about, but I'll turn it over to Hannah to pick out a question that she can ask and maybe even answer herself, and then flip it over to the next popcorn team member who can take some of these questions that are coming in through the chat.
Thanks, Christian. So I'll start off with, someone asked, what are some of your best tips for reviewing our applications over the next 10 days, particularly our written materials? And I always love to give this advice, which is take a break, get some space from it, do not look at it for a little while, and then come back with fresh eyes and reread it, proofread it, have someone else proofread it. If you've read the same sentence that you've written out in your head, that you've written on paper over and over again, you're going to know what the message is, even if there is a typo, and someone else might be able to pick that up that you haven't. So definitely proofread, look for spelling errors, look for grammatical errors, make sure that the sentence is conveying what you want it to actually convey and not just what you're thinking in your head. So that would be my main advice on that. Does anyone else want to add on?
So something that I would say is that try to diversify the people who are looking at your materials, because similar to the admissions pipeline, you want a diverse set of stakeholders that will help reflect. And we're thinking intergenerationally, internationally where you can, because the more universally understood your content is, that's going to appeal to the diverse people who are looking at your application, even beyond the people who are on the screen today. So where you can invite those inputs would be really helpful. And again, use the discernment that you don't have to use everyone else's feedback. You have to kind of understand what you are and who you are. So you can say, that's great feedback, but that's not who I am. And so then that will help sharpen a little bit of your narrative. I'll pass it over to Sarah to ask and answer the next question.
Thanks, Christian. So I'll tackle another question here. The question's regarding the essays. Is the admission committee interested more in our personality, our background, or should we talk about professional experiences? It's a great question. And I think what this ties back to is a lot, and I believe Alicia commented on this, is really the contextual nature of this application. For those in attendance who applied to colleges or universities in the United States, a lot of the application is not necessarily about a right or wrong answer or a cutoff GPA. We are really interested in understanding your story and understanding how you will fit into this cohort setting in this really transformative experience. So this is to say that for your essays, I think it really depends on where you are in life. You know, we have folks who are applying their senior year of undergraduate or have been out of undergraduate for a long time. So whatever you feel like is most salient in your life right now. For some of you, you might be working for a number of years and your professional experience has really shaped the way in which you want to tackle the Schwarzman Scholars program, right? And how you want to immerse yourself in what you'd like to learn. For those of you that are really just starting that professional experience, it might be more that your background and your lived experiences prior to undergrad or during undergrad really helped shape that. And you're looking to really take that next step into the Schwarzman Scholars program. So this is all to say there is no right or wrong answer here. We are most interested in really understanding what it really comes to the fore for you and how can you really illustrate that and really tell us why Schwarzman, what do you hope to contribute to this community and what do you hope to take out of it when it comes to global change. Does anyone else, any of my wonderful colleagues have anything else to add? All right, I will popcorn over to Alicia. Or why did you think you wanted to add?
And actually, I'll jump right in, just ask a question that's come up, and then Alicia, I'll ping over to you. A couple of people have asked, which is a wonderful question that we get pretty often, is, do I need to have China experience to apply to Schwarzman Scholars? And then on the vice versa, if I have China experience, is it still okay to apply to Schwarzman Scholars? And excellent questions. And the answer is, China experience is, we're really neutral on China experience in the selection process for Schwarzman Scholars. Steve's vision, as we talked about at the beginning, is that we assemble the next generation of leaders from across sectors, across countries, across fields, connect them with each other, connect them with their colleagues in China, give them a front row seat to what's happening in China, and then send them out into the world to grow as leaders and to stay connected with each other and the mission of the program. And so if you have China experience, perhaps you have studied Chinese in college, or you've studied abroad in China, perhaps you are a Chinese heritage candidate. If you are a candidate who has never spoken a word of Chinese, never studied a word of Chinese, never been to China, perhaps you really don't have any exposure at all to China in your life so far. Both of those are absolutely great. We welcome you to apply wherever you are on that spectrum. Just a piece of advice: if you do have China experience, whatever that may look like for you, we really encourage you to be specific in articulating why the Schwarzman Scholars program is crucial for you as you advance your leadership journey. So you've been to China, you've been to Beijing or Shanghai or wherever it may be on a study abroad program in college, or you've studied Chinese, or whatever your experience may be. You really want to convince and help convince the selection committee that this Schwarzman Scholars is a crucial next step for you in your journey. Given that you already have that experience, perhaps living and studying in China. So that's something you want to think about, but the experience does not give you an advantage or a disadvantage in the process, and the lack thereof does not as well. So you can check that off your list of things to worry about, and we look forward to reviewing your applications. And if you have China experience, look forward to hearing about it as well. Alicia, I'll popcorn over to you.
Actually, I'd like to pose another question for you to
Sure.
follow up with. And this is again related to the unique context of right now just being in the pandemic context.
Right.
There's a lot of queries coming in asking about if it's appropriate to list remote internships under the experience abroad section of our application.
Absolutely. So I think for internships, we want to know what you've been up to, right? And we know that every person on the planet has been impacted by the last year and a half's global pandemic in many different ways, including our ability to travel abroad for internships. So as you think about, your life and your leadership trajectory over the past year and a half, we absolutely understand and recognize that working for an organization not in your home country that is remote is international experience in the context of 2020 and 2021. So we love to learn about that and look forward to seeing it. And if you have any other questions, about specific examples or anything, please feel free to let us know. But we would welcome that. And as Christian mentioned earlier, and as we'll talk a little bit about more today as well, the application, we have, really understand at all aspects of the review process how everyone has been affected by the last year and a half, and whether it be inside or outside of the classroom or your career. So we're taking that into account, and our team of global reviewers and interviewers are as well. Alicia, over to you.
Thanks so much, Wyatt. And I'm going to expand a little bit more about the leadership roles and recognition. So there are a few queries coming in regarding, is it possible to, must I list these roles and recognitions both on the application and also on the CV? In addition to that, what does it mean by descending priority order? So very quickly, one of my main pieces of advice that I always like to give is just to be very strategic with your application process, right? And so if you worry that there's not going to be enough room in your CV, or it sounds rather redundant, then you don't have to list it in both places, right? So certainly you can just, you are able to make that judgment call on your end, but it is not necessary for you to list it both on your resume and also on the leadership roles and recognition page. In terms of descending order, again, it's going to be more about the priority in which you feel it is important to you, right? So ultimately, this application process is an opportunity for us to better understand who you are as an applicant, what matters to you and why, as my other colleagues have mentioned beforehand. And so we don't have a set expectation of, which ones are going to be, what's expected to be number one or in ranked order. So it really is going to be something that you will choose to do. And so ultimately, the most important one should be the number one entry that you have. The least important will be the number 10 entry if it's there. Again, no pressure for you to list 10 leadership roles and activities simply because we have the space for you to do so. We are more interested in learning about, the depth of your experiences, not necessarily the breadth. So just because there are these opportunities to fill out up to 10, there is no requirement or set expectation for you to do so. All right, over to Federico.
Okay, well, thank you. I don't know how to compliment you guys or follow up. It's just, for everybody watching, you're very privileged to be with this group of people who I have the immense pleasure to work with. I'll go with chronologically. So one question that came up right in the beginning of this session was, I would love to know your main advice on how and what to cover in this statement of purpose. And we get a lot of questions about the statement of purpose, how much it should be covering our plans and their ties to China and to Schwarzman Scholars. So it is quite a lot that we ask in the prompt of the statement of purpose, and a lot to be accomplished in 500 words or less. We know this is no minor task, but it's not an impossible task on that end. And I think one way to explain the purpose of the statement of purpose, as you all know, we invite applicants from all walks of life, from all disciplines, from all regions and countries, and people with very different interests. So we get, unlike most master's degree programs or graduate programs, we're inviting people who are, pursuing a career in engineering or in the arts or journalism or international relations. And unlike many selection processes for graduate degree programs that require some form of project or a well-structured proposal or research proposal with hypothesis and expected outcomes, we obviously do not require that. But the statement of purpose, one of the goals or one of the intentions of the statement of purpose is precisely to help the admissions committee to know what are your main interests, what are your main motivations to apply for this specific program in global affairs, right? So this is not the space to come up with an academic and thorough and very detailed essay on your displaying your knowledge of a particular issue, but it is an opportunity for you to show us what is your strategy, what is your plan, what motivates you to apply to this program. And I think another element that I tend to say that is quite important and that is visible in successful or good statement of purposes that I've read in the past and the team has read in the past is an element of realism, right? We're not, if on the one hand, we're asking applicants to tell us what are their plans for the future, what do they envision for themselves for the future, we're also asking them to articulate their intentions and their purposes through a realistic lenses, right? So you are applying to a graduate degree program that is a 1-year, very intense, very demanding, and very engaging program in China, right? So it is important that somehow you explain through the statement of purpose what you want to do and what you're capable to do in realistic terms. So if your goal is, or if your purpose is to be the president of your country, well, that's great. And we invite you to state that up front in your statement of purpose, but be realistic about, why this program, why applying for this program, what can you do during this year, and what can you do, what do you think that being part of this program will contribute to a trajectory of leadership or a trajectory of growth for your professional development, a trajectory that has already started and of which this program will be a step towards a direction that you want to go. So I would emphasize that for the statement of purpose, it's important that you reveal your idealisms, your higher goals, but also that you show us how much you know, how much aware you are of a specific issue that you are interested in, and how this issue relates to the main curricular design of this program and missions of this program, right? So I think, and going back to the question that Wyatt addressed earlier of how much we require people to know, to have a previous understanding of China in order to be able to write a compelling and good statement of purpose. And again, the China experience is neutral. So I would be And when describing your purposes and articulating your arguments and your whys to apply to this program, try to focus on your authentic purposes and ambitions rather than trying to impress the admissions committee on something you read and, oh, I know a lot about China and I want to go there to know even more about this particular issue and China, how China's dealing with education or environment or anything like this. Show us a more genuine reason for why applying to this. We'll pass to who wants to go next? Jump putting it up, and I hope this very broad comment was useful for whoever asked the question anonymously. So next, Hannah, you want to go next?
I'm so sorry for you cut out, so I couldn't hear what question you were asking next. But I've seen a lot of questions come in about the leadership experience, so I will touch on that first. We've gotten questions about, should you write about an experience that's directly connected to your interest in the program, or should it be your biggest leadership experience? We're asking, do we think this person is a leader? How are they a leader, and will they be a leader in the future? And so we want you to write about what you think is, you should be able to write the most compelling thing about your biggest, whatever feels like the biggest leadership experience to you. It doesn't have to be specifically tied to China, specifically tied to Schwarzman Scholars. If you have something that is nearest and dearest to your heart as a leader, and that's what you can display the best and ties the best to your narrative, that's what you should write about. It will be the most compelling because it's the most compelling to you, and that will show through. You have opportunities to display multiple leadership experiences throughout the application. So focus on the most important one to you and who you are as a leader in that essay, and then tie in any others that are relevant in your statement of purpose, in your leadership roles and recognition section, in your resume or CV. We want to make sure there's space for you to touch on all of those, but as leaders, you will have one that you think is the most important to you right now as a leader, and that's what you should talk about. Similarly, I saw a question about if you should write about your most recent experience as a leader versus something that took place several years ago. Again, think about what answers the question, is this person a leader? How do they function as a leader, and will they be a leader in the future? You don't need to talk about what you're doing today or what you did yesterday if you have something more compelling that's from before then. That being said, if you're 25, maybe don't talk about something that you did 10 years ago in high school, because that doesn't necessarily show us that you're still a leader today. So think about the larger picture that you're presenting to the admissions committee when you go to answer those questions. I will pass it over to Sarah now to answer another question.
I'd love to just expand just for a second, Hannah, on what you're talking about with leadership, which is very compelling. And I think what's really important here, and hopefully we've emphasized this in a number of different parts of the application, is the context of leadership. And I really encourage folks to think critically about what leadership means to them rather than what does leadership mean to the committee. Because I think we are all really excited at the prospect of learning more about your form of leadership. I think that's something that really drives us as professionals. And I think we see that as a really dynamic contribution to the cohort. So I think that ties back to what you were saying, Hannah, and some of the questions about, well, should I talk about high school? Should I talk about college? I mean, it's very possible, and I've spoken to applicants where their leadership arc really started in high school and has really transformed and evolved, and maybe there are really similar causes and themes, organizations, companies that have been a part of that trajectory. And in that case, like I think there's a lot to be said for that journey. So I really encourage folks to think critically, again, to reflect on what does leadership mean to me? How do I hope to contribute that, and also change and explore that further as part of the Schwarzman program. So that's just something I'd love to add. I'm going to turn it over to maybe Alicia. Yeah, go for it.
Hey everyone, thanks again. And I appreciate all the clarifying questions coming in through the Q&A after I did some more explanations about our leadership roles and recognition section. And appreciate again your attention to detail and your grace as we transition to this new application system too. And so I checked in with my other colleagues who were helped build out the application. And so we are going to affirm that yes, this year, it is the 10 listed, it's going to be sorted by the date, which is all the more reason why we encourage you to be very intentional in selecting what you want to highlight there and what's important in your overall leadership narrative. So I want to reinstate and reassure you again that what you are experiencing on the application right now is correct, that it is going to be listed in through date chronological order. All right, so hopefully that reassures you all and that clarifies things in that regard. I'm going to allow someone else to address another question. Christian?
Well, I just want to add a little bit of texture. So the leadership roles and recognitions is really a mapping of what matters to you, of what's important to you. So publications, ways in which you have held formal and informal roles of increasing membership, or having a particular role in a laboratory that did some kind of research that impacts hundreds or millions. It's really an invitation for you to think about what are extensions of who you are and your values. It's not an assessment of what matters more, because ultimately between having a role as being an officer versus having an internship versus having a particular project lead title, all of that is supposed to be an extension of who you are. And what we're asking is what matters to you. So how did you do the things that you list in that section? Why did you do the things that are listed in that section? And that's where the entire application really comes together in your letters of recommendation in trying to craft what that narrative is. And so another shout out to those different resources on our YouTube channel that talk about what are your approaches of taking all the chaos of all the things that happen to your life and how to bring it down to a concept that's going to be digestible and understood by a very multi-stakeholder audience. So on that note, I want to actually pass it over to Frey to talk a little bit about who is it that's reviewing this whole pipeline of applications, because it's not just the people here on the screen, but it's a whole community of people who are offering their inputs for selection.
Right, good, Christian. Yeah, there was a good question there. Could you clarify what process the application goes through once they're submitted? And I apologize if my connection is a bit choppy. That's all on me and Verizon. But anyways, it is, one of the many unique things about Schwarzman Scholars in comparison to other graduate programs and admissions processes for fellowship or international programs, is that the whole process happens incredibly fast. Most people in this team will be participating in this process, not for the first time, even though we have Sarah participating in this for the first time this year. But yes, as Christian said, it involves a lot of people, but it happens really fast, right? So once application deadline reaches out on September 21st, starting on the very next morning, the whole admissions team will be dividing applications into readers, and we have a group of experts of over 100 readers all over the world from various areas of expertise. So one thing you can be sure about is that the people reading your applications are people who are aware of the academic system you come from, the context where you come from. Many people worry saying like, oh, how do you compare a transcript or the trajectory of someone who graduated from an Ivy League in the United States to someone who was a young professional in Africa or somewhere in Asia? How can these trajectories be compared in any ways? And the critical answer to that, and we do an extensive and year-long training and preparations, and we're continuously improving on that. But we have a very large and qualified team of application readers, and all of them will be, so every application will be evaluated by independent readers, and those readers will indicate which ones of the top candidates will be invited to the final round and the final stage of selection, which happens through the interviews. And again, all of this happens really fast. So every applicant will be informed about the outcome of their application by mid-October. So you will be notified whether you were invited for interview and you will be informed about all the details about how to participate in the interview, or whether you were not selected to interviews. Interviews will take place between end of October and beginning of November. And the results, the final results of who will be part of the 2022-2023 Schwarzman Scholars cohort will be given in late November. So admission offers will be sent out in late November, and we give a very short period also for people who were selected to indicate whether they want to accept the offer or reject. I would strongly recommend that if you receive an offer, please accept. It will be very sad. We do not have a deferral process. So if you are accepted for this year, you cannot defer your enrollment for a future class. You would have to start the whole process again if that was the case. And yes, so pretty much the whole process happens in a space of 2.5 to 3 months. And by December, those who are part of the next class will be notified, and we'll start the class in August of next year. So who wants to go next?
Not going next, but can you all believe 2022 and 2023, that class? It's just remarkable.
All right, so I think in an effort to wrap up, and we know that we've been very busily answering questions here on the Zoom chat, is an invitation that this is, of course, a continued discussion. So if your question wasn't particularly answered, then please do reach out at admissions@schwarzmanscholars.org. We do have a tradition in panels that we've hosted with alumni where we ask why Schwarzman Scholars and why now, and we're actually going to give you our versions of that in reverse order of our introduction. So Sarah, I'm going to have you lead off on answering this question, and then Wyatt will close us out.
Thank you, Christian. Always keeping me on my toes. I really appreciate that. So I will start us off. This question is, I'm sure all 6 of us could wax poetic about this question, and because I think the answer is very deeply held to us, and personal and professional, in personal and professional ways. I think for me, I guess what immediately comes to mind is every morning, I wake up and I read the newspaper on my phone, granted, but I'm reading about what's going on in our world, and I'm fascinated with how interconnected our world has become, and the problems and issues that face our world today that are increasingly urgent and require thinkers that are thinking about this interconnected nature. And every single article and issue that is presented in the paper when I get up in the morning, I think to myself, there's a Schwarzman scholar that can tackle this. And anything from President Xi and President Biden, having talks to environmental issues that are quite urgent at hand. I think about how much Schwarzman Scholars is going to make an impact in this. And it's very exciting to be part of a program where I can see direct applications of this program to real world issues. And that's certainly why I am motivated by this program. And I'm so excited that all of you are interested in being a part of this community. I'm gonna popcorn over to Hannah.
Thanks, Sarah. You hit the nail over the head with that one. In addition to what Sarah said, for me, a big why Schwartzman and why now is the network of alumni and scholars. In the past year that I worked for this program, I've been absolutely blown away by just all the work that they're doing already, the passion that they bring to it, and the support that they bring to one another. We actually saw this past year with our class that was pretty much only virtually connected with one another. They were so engaged and so connected to one another throughout the world and online. And I'm just so amazed by the work that they continue to do with each other, for each other, in support of one another. And I'm so excited to see what they do next. I'm gonna pass it over to Alicia now.
Thanks, Hannah. I think this past year, and just being part of Schwarzman Scholars for, I just celebrated my 2-year work anniversary not too long ago. It's been remarkable to see at this really unique moment in time, just the way leadership is being demonstrated by everyone affiliated with the Schwarzman Scholars community, how our scholars are stepping up, and how we have our guest lecturers, even during these times, they're so pressed with other things or guest speakers, but they have found a way and moment in time to connect with Schwarzman Scholars and to really, they believe in our mission, and just to see all of this leadership in action during this moment in time. If there's a will, there's a way, and then we will find time and space for opportunity to engage. And that's what's been so empowering and exciting for me to see and observe, just leadership in action in moments where it's been really challenging for all of us. And so in these crucible moments, people really emerge. And I can't wait for this upcoming class to join this community and for you to potentially experience this as well. I think who was next? Is it Frey or is it Christian? I'm not sure. Is it Frey? Off to you.
All right. Well, I'll try to be brief, which is always a very challenging thing for me. I think, I agree with everybody here. And I think, looking back, it's not too much to say that the last 2 years were a period of incredible loss, right? On a humanitarian level, on an environmental level, on a personal level. All of us, I think, have stories of things that we lost. We lost weddings, we lost family celebrations, we lost classes, we lost the presence of others, right? And I think that the time that is coming ahead, hopefully, will be a time of rebuilding and sticking to and reconnecting to the things that were not lost. And when I think about this program, and not because I work for it and I work at it, but I think it's one thing that inspires is if I look back and think if this Steve Schwarzman and the other creators of this program had waited 3-4 years to create this program, it would never be created, right? And this program was not lost. And I think on the contrary, the mission and the call to action that this program represents is perhaps more relevant than ever before. So take advantage of that. I wish I was in your position right now as applicants to really go for it and make the most out of this rebuild. I think programs like this will still speak for many years in the future, the importance of building those connections, of really valuing the things that are still standing, right? As we all rebuild the globe in many ways. So who's next? And thank you again, everybody, for joining us today. Really a pleasure.
Sure, and I think that's me. I stand by the words that variance is value. So as the world changes, what the world needs also is changing, as well as leaders are always changing. What's the beauty, and having recruited for Schwarzman since 2015, is seeing how the different inputs that we bring in with each class will eventually start to integrate, so that you see international, intergenerational, and intersector dynamics play out in that you can't send a person to the moon just by themselves. You got to put a team behind that. And so I think that's really important to make sure that as Schwarzman Scholars to add to each cohort, and we have, I think, 630 plus alumni now amongst our community, that as that continues to grow, then it's how to work in concert with one another. And so there'll be times of healthy conflict. There'll be times of intellectual friction, but I think that's where the growth happens, is how do I integrate something that can be more universal and unique at the same time. So that's what I'm really excited about. Schwarzman Scholars really tipping towards China, towards a more technologically advanced world, that we really need people who are able to kind of understand who they are and who they're not, and how to couple with other team members on that. And with that, I'll pass it over to Wyatt to close us out.
Great. Thanks, Christian. And thanks, team. This has been just a delight to be with you all. And I'm so excited to see your energy and your enthusiasm and your thoughtful and well thought out questions. It really shows how you all are engaging in this process that we talked about at the beginning. It's that self-reflective process that you're sharing with us. And we're so honored to be able to be a part of this work. And for me, what wakes me up every morning really connects back with how Sarah started us out with this question is, I look at the problems that we're facing as a generation and look ahead to the future with problems like climate change and international and geopolitical conflict. And when you think about how it will be when two heads of state or two owners of the company or innovators who are sitting across from each other, when those two people become Schwarzman Scholars, you can think about how the outcome may be quite different. It could be different in the sense of preventing a war. It could be different in the sense of actually countries like China and another country from around the world working together to solve a problem like climate change, and having a cross-cultural and cross-border solution that we know that it requires, right? So when I think about the future and the fact that, as Christian said, we're passing in the mid 600s, and our alumni network will be to 1,000 to 5,000, eventually to 50,000, 100,000 Schwarzman Scholars, as this program is set up to run in perpetuity. The impact will only grow, and it will be an impact that will be positive for the entire world. And so there's no more important kind of foundational work to be doing than this right now, setting the stage for that. And as others mentioned, our Schwarzman Scholars alumni are already out there in the world leading. They're already stepping into roles of significant leadership and making an impact in their field, in their countries, and across borders and time zones as well. So that work and that impact is already being seen. And you can learn more about and hear more about that on our website and on our social media channels, as we really work to feature a lot of our alumni as they continue to grow in their careers as well. So with that, we're going to wrap up, and I just want to express again our gratitude for you spending an hour with us today. We wish you all the best in the selection process. We're here to support you, and we encourage you to keep in touch. Reach out to us anytime at admissions@schwarzmanscholars.org as you continue to work on your application. And we're now at 11 days, 6 hours, and 58 minutes away from our deadline. So we look forward to receiving your application. Take care, and we'll talk to you all soon.
Thank you.